Hi everyone, this is Eric, and welcome to another episode of Oh, Go On Then, You're Amongst Friends. In today's episode, I talk with my dear friend Miriam in a wide-ranging conversation from wearing underwear in a Zoom call to finding our place in the universe. I love the parts where she talks about her loyalty and her care for other people, and the importance of elderly people and the wisdom that they bring, and the importance of human connection and family, and that we get along further when we're together. One of the harrowing stories that you'll hear in it is the time she was in Nepal delivering medical supplies to a rural village after the earthquake, and a woman came and hijacked the car that they were in and started driving it along this cliff to another village. So you'll need to listen to the podcast to find out what was going on. I find it actually quite heartwarming. So excited to introduce you to Miriam, and I guess we should start the podcast now. Okay. Everyone, welcome to an episode of Oh, Go On Then, You're Amongst Friends. I'm here with Miriam. First question.
Yeah.
Red or blue?
Oh.
You don't like the question?
No.
Why?
I don't know.
Do you want another color? Or do you not want any color for a question?
I mean, like, for what? Like, decorating a house, paint color, car?
What does your gut tell you?
Blue.
Really? See, that was easy. But blue in what context?
But, like, if you asked about, like, lipstick color, it would be red.
That's the thing. It's whatever's in your head. So red or blue?
I think blue.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not for lipstick.
Mm-mm.
What about decorating a house?
White. I want to paint this whole house white.
Even the ceilings?
Uh-huh. It's weird, too. Like, if you look up, you can see where they completely missed a lot of areas. Yeah, I think that's next up. Painting the inside of the house.
I like it. Yeah, I don't
Opening
really
it up.
like the beige. What about blue? What about red?
Neither. Maybe like some really funky wild wallpaper.
Absolutely. I think you're going to say wild wolves.
That's what I want.
Bring them in.
No. Like all the walls white, and then one wall like in each of the rooms with really funky wallpaper.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm feeling.
Okay, question 2. Do you fold or scrunch your toilet paper?
Fold.
Really?
But sometimes I scrunch.
When does it happen?
I fold when I'm wiping the pee.
Yeah.
And I scrunch when I'm wiping the poop.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And as my cousin says, it's always like a plus when you have a ghost wipe.
Is it? That makes sense. What does that mean?
It means like 0 skid marks.
Uh-huh. A plus.
Yeah. Like just like consider that like success in your day.
Like a...
I really did it right this time.
Absolutely.
Or you're really constipated.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Wow, so you're a folder and a scruncher.
Yeah, it just kind of depends.
Mm-hmm.
What about over or under toilet paper?
Ooh. Oh, yeah. I thought you meant like over or under.
No, like where
Too many actions.
Where it goes over toilet paper.
Oh, it has to come toward me, the toilet paper.
Me too.
Have you ever been in a toilet or in a restroom and it's gone behind and you've corrected it? The toilet paper? Even at like restaurants, I corrected at restaurants.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever fold the toilet paper?
In triangles.
Yeah.
The office building that I clean. They've got triangles.
I like doing it just randomly. Like even at my place when I know people are going to come over and they're like, who's cleaning Miriam's house? Who's doing this?
It's like you're at the Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah.
Big spoon or little spoon?
With Presley, I'm always the big spoon.
Makes sense.
She lays on her back.
Presley's the dog.
For those of you who don't know, I adopted her from Humane Society, and she loves me, but she hates everyone else.
Yeah. She just scared me to death.
We're working on it.
She might bark during this.
Yeah, she barked at Eric. She's in a crate right now because she's doing this thing called resource guarding of the house. And it's been quite the experience, to say the least. I got her on April Fool's Day. So a month and 20 days. Is it May 20th?
That's May 21st.
May 21st. So almost 2 months. Mm-hmm.
So you're a big spoon.
I'm a big spoon with her. I would say that I like to be the little spoon, though, if it's like with a human.
That makes sense. Do you know what my favorite part of this question is? Is that some people that I ask, they say, probably dessert spoon. I really...
No way.
Or, I'm not making fun
a
of them.
grapefruit spoon.
Yeah.
You know those grapefruit ones?
Those are the worst. A spork.
What?
Fourth question. What makes you laugh?
Oh, man. Everything. I think sometimes I laugh too much. A lot of things make me laugh.
Yeah?
A lot.
On a daily basis, do you...
It kind
of yourself?
It like depends on like who I'm with. Like if I'm with like my family, this is really horrible, but like we make fun of a lot of people and I'll laugh at that. If I'm with myself, I will laugh, especially if I like see something where it's like a little odd and I'm like, man, I wish that person could see this.
Yeah.
I laugh a lot. I laugh with Presley.
That's the majority of my life.
It's like it's constantly laughing. And it's kind of been good for me, like during COVID, wearing a mask, because in situations where like I'm like smiling or laughing when I probably shouldn't at work, I at least have like some coverage so they can't even tell. Or yawning. They can't see me yawning.
That's the best.
It's so great.
Except have you ever like done that and then the person's like, are you having a seizure?
Yeah.
But they can't see.
They are, because you can kind of see like in the eyes a little bit. Or just like wearing underwear in a Zoom call. It's great. You know, like a nice button-up shirt from Madewell, like with the collar, just wearing underwear. Couldn't get away with that in a meeting.
No.
But you can with Zoom.
I once had a Skype meeting and I had a button-up shirt and coffee, and 32 seconds before they called, I spilled my coffee all over my lap and I like stood up. And so the camera was just on my underwear and coffee and legs. And I sat down and then I answered the call and had to go with like coffee pants.
Did they know?
No.
They never figured out.
No, they didn't. Gosh. Have you ever found laughter has gotten you through tough times?
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely.
I think so.
Mm-hmm. It's healing. You can't take life too serious.
What was your first... I can't be serious. What was your first happy childhood memory?
I'm just waiting for Presley to just...
I know, Presley's going to start barking.
She's actually okay now that she's covered from the world.
She's going to start barking.
My first childhood memory?
No, first happy childhood memory.
First happy childhood memory. I remember when Miles was born. He was little, and I was like 6 years old. But I remember being in the back of the minivan and holding him.
Your
and
brother
he was
Miles.
crying, and I was like shushing him to sleep.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That is so cute.
Really, like I vividly remember that.
Was his crying like...
It was like,
How
it's
did you
going to be
feel?
okay.
Really?
It wasn't like I didn't feel like a burden or anything.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel bonded at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Early on?
Mm-hmm.
Day one?
Yeah. I am sure he was like in the months range, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that my parents were letting me hold him. Like, if I had a 6-year-old with like a baby, I would be like, helicopter mom, but...
Oh my gosh.
It's different. It was different then, or maybe my parents were just
Did you
different.
feel a sense of like happiness then?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
I think I was way more stoked with Miles being born than Mary being born.
That's okay. Why is that?
I think it was the age. I was like 3 with Mary. Like,
all right.
don't invade my space. And I was old enough, like 6 years old. Like, okay, yeah, we can have Miles. I'm ready.
You're so mature.
It's super, super mature.
You've seen the world.
I have slept parts of it.
Next question. Does the universe, whatever the universe means, does the universe know you exist?
I think so. Mm-hmm.
What does it think about you?
I don't think it thinks.
Hmm.
I think it just kind of knows. Humans think.
Sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Or sometimes too much.
Oh gosh. But you think that it knows you exist at least.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we all kind of play a part in some way, shape, or form.
In what small form do you see your part?
I think I'm still trying to figure that out.
I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. I've felt that my life is if I'm in a watch, and every little part is incredibly necessary, and without that part, like the watch wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But that I'm, in a way, no more special than every other piece in the watch.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What cause or group of people do you want to make life a little bit better for?
I think the elderly.
Really?
Yeah, I think our culture is not, or at least our society, we don't respect the wisdom of our elders.
Your dad's here.
What? Just have him.
Maybe he'll be in it.
See what happens.
Look at your smile. Is he dropping off a letter?
So confused.
Here he is.
We got her.
Oh my gosh.
She's a tricky one.
I know. She'll get better though, right?
I think so. I think it's actually good to have people here to expose her rather than keep her in like a little bubble. You know? Because getting a dog during COVID, I feel like with her, she thinks, look at her nose.
Is that it right there?
Yeah.
She's gonna bark and gonna scare me to death.
Oh.
All right, should we begin?
Yeah.
Again?
Yeah.
Did you answer that question? What causes elderly people?
Elderly people.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Has it always been elderly people?
I would say elderly people, it comes to mind, and then people of color too.
Really?
I think racism is still real. And I think that when it comes to elderly people, we have so much wisdom that we can learn from our elders and respecting them, and rather than like shoving them in facilities and like away from the world, I think that there can be a lot more that we could do.
And even now, I feel like during COVID, it has affected elderly people and the elders, and to not respect that has been a big part of this time.
It's true.
What are 2 positive words to describe yourself?
Oh boy.
These are hard questions. They're terrible questions.
I'm very loyal, which I think is a positive thing, but the shadow side is that I think I can be like too loyal, like hard for me to give up on things. And I would say I'm a caretaker too.
Really?
So even like just being a nurse, like constantly putting people ahead of myself and caring for them. I would say that's positive.
When you say loyal to things, do you mean like people, things?
People, family, work. Like even like Presley, like I got her and I'm like, I'm going to keep her. Like there's no returning her.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, I'm going to make this work.
Forever. Loyalty.
It runs deep.
And caretaker, have you always been a caretaker? When did you realize that that was a thing?
I've always enjoyed it. Yeah, I've always enjoyed caretaking, teaching, like making people feel comfortable, bringing people in. I think that that's just kind of like, it just feels natural.
Yeah, I get that. I feel Brian.
Yay.
Such a loyal friend.
Yes.
Ah!
Yes.
Gosh, it's been ages.
I know.
What is like a moment or an event where you thought life would end, but then moved on? Like, oh, I'm not going to get out of this move.
Oh, gosh.
Then it like moves on.
I was in Nepal in the back of a truck. We had like a bunch of medical supplies and like water and food. and we were supposed to go to a rural village that had been hit pretty hard by the earthquake.
Yeah.
And so we went, like the director of the nonprofit and then we had the whole truck full of stuff. And we get to the village and this lady hijacks the truck.
What?
And we're like looking over this cliff, and I had fully accepted my death. I was like, I hadn't even really thought about the earthquakes or the aftershocks killing me at all. That hadn't even crossed my mind. But the moment the truck was hijacked, I was like, I'm going to die. And she didn't want us to deliver the food and water and medical supplies to that village. She said there was another village that was more in need than theirs. And so she couldn't communicate that to us. So she just hijacked the truck and drove us there and then pointed to where it needed to go and got out and just left.
What? So it was supposed to go to her own village?
And she was like, we don't need it. These people need it more than us.
Are you kidding me? That's so kind.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime...
I thought I was going to die. Yeah.
So like within human kindness, there's a little bit of unknown.
Butthole clenching.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of it. It's a long drive. I love that she just got in the car.
Yeah, she was just like,
going.
I'm taking over. I'm in charge.
Nope.
This is where it's going.
And people you just let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
This is an easier question. Love and suffering are said to be our greatest teachers.
Right.
What has each taught you?
I feel like everything is love. Like we are beings of love. And I think when it comes to suffering, I think it's just a part of the human condition. Like pain, right? Like it's an inevitable. You can't avoid it. Yet the only way out is like through. So I would say that it's we'll all suffer at some point. And I think the key for me is not avoiding that suffering. It's like working through it.
Now, as a nurse, you've seen a lot of people that have died, and you've witnessed what some would consider suffering. What has that taught you about death and suffering?
You know, I think that the thing that I keep coming back to is the importance of human connection and the importance of family too. And like maintaining those relationships. And I think the hardest part for me is seeing someone who is at the end of their life and they've completely ostracized a lot of their family and friends and they don't have a lot of connections and support. And I think the more that I can like connect with my friends and my family and learn from them and grow together, I look at that as like a successful life.
Yeah.
And I was reminded of that too when like anytime I would go provide medical care like in disasters or war zones. If you have family, you kind of have everything. But in the midst of what was like pre-COVID, I think that our society was so focused on like individual, like how far can you get alone? And I think that we can get so much farther together.
Wow. Fascinating. Fascinating that like loss and suffering and death has taught you how important that connection is, which also relates to how important love is and associated with that. What has love taught you about yourself?
You know, I think that the term self-love really gets thrown around a lot. Like you have to love yourself before you love other people. But for myself, I didn't really find self-love until I did a week-long retreat called the Path of Love. And it was so transformational for me. And I would say that that was like the beginning of my journey of like, not necessarily, I don't want to say like that's when I started loving myself, but when I started learning who I was and then being able to build off of that and then appreciating like the good parts of myself, the ugly parts of myself, the light side, the dark side. And that's really when I started diving into shadow work too, which was really powerful for me and kind of like going beyond that, beyond the path of love too, doing like shadow workshops and I did another course that I really loved it was run by Rising Woman. And she does like a couple of different they're like online courses. But it was called Becoming the One, which I thought was really powerful. And really like the perspective that like you can't really look to other people to solve things for you. You have to be that one, your own like grounding force. And the foundation of that again goes back to self-love too.
Wow.
I think that'll be like an ever changing and evolving experience throughout my whole life though. It's not one of those things where I can just like check it off and be like, done. I love myself for all the days of my life.
Next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like being like, and Presley's trained.
Presley's trained with a little muzzle.
Gosh, couldn't get the muzzle on her.
You almost wrestled her.
She was just like, I do that all the time. I'll put her in a headlock.
When you were trying to get the muzzle, and then you were giving her treats at the same time.
Yeah.
It was quite a...
I know.
There was a bit of, I don't know.
She
was annoyed with you.
Totally. I'll squeeze her really tight too. Like get her really close. And she's just like, tries to wiggle out.
She loves you.
I love her.
The treats are next to her. This is an even lighter question. Have you ever thought you're going to die?
Oh. The Nepal experience hit me. I think that's the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you thinking about in your mind? Were you like, I've got to take the keys from this lady?
No, I had like fully surrendered. It was just like, this could happen. And like in a split second, I was just like, all right.
Really?
Let's do this.
You were ready to just be toast.
I was, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't like a suicidal thing. It was just kind of like, well, I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah, in the mountains.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on cheating? And what is it?
Like what type of cheating?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I was talking to my old roommates and I was like, oh, what are your thoughts on cheating? And they were like, Eric, there are many types of cheating.
Yeah, like cheating on a test, cheating on a partner. Partner.
Yeah, I should.
Cheating on a partner.
What are your thoughts of cheating on a partner? I only thought that it was one way of cheating, but...
Oh, there's many ways.
Didn't even occur to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the physical side, right? And then there's emotional. I don't know. I mean, like my mom cheated on my dad and the divorce like followed shortly after. And I remember her saying at a young age, like, well, if your needs just aren't being met, you can go cheat. Now I have a different perspective. I'm like, you gotta like meet your own needs and like say what you want in a relationship. And both people have to do that to make it work.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is like having like a strong foundation of being honest constantly is really important. But I don't know. I read the book by Esther Perel called Mating in Captivity. And if you want a good book to read, it's really, really good.
Is it about zoo animals?
No. So she's like a sex therapist and her husband is a trauma therapist, I believe. And they have 2 boys. They've been married for like many years, but she writes the book pretty much talking about like the history of relationships. So like 100 years ago, women married men for financial security, and then they had kids to, procreate, and they were in like this matrimony, like in these relationships because they were kind of stuck. Like divorces weren't the thing to do. And then once women started working and like becoming more independent, and now they can completely like live on their own, do their own thing, the evolution of relationships has changed drastically over the course of like 100 years. So she dives into like every chapter has a different topic, and like it'll be on intimacy or on eroticism, and she talks about examples of her clients. And she has a podcast.
No.
It's called Where Do We Begin? Or From Where Do We Begin? and her clients sign their rights away. She doesn't give their names, but it's all different forms of couples therapy on a podcast.
Get out of town. Oh my God.
And so she did a TED Talk on
That sounds so good.
pretty much the foundation of it is when you have an affair, like when there's an affair in a relationship, you have to look at a death of that old relationship and turn into a new one. And her whole thing is like, you don't necessarily have to have a divorce after someone cheats.
Yeah.
Like you can evolve and change and just sit down and say like, what was working, what wasn't working.
Yeah.
Let's move beyond that. So,
gosh. I mean,
I don't know. The dramatic side of me, like 10 years ago, would be like, if someone cheats, you should leave. But now I kind of look at it as like, if it happens and you're both honest and both people want to be in the relationship, make it work. Just be honest about it.
I agree.
And some people would look at like watching porn as cheating. Mm-hmm. Some people wouldn't. Or some people would look, like even in the book, Mating in Captivity, she talks about open relationships.
Oh, yeah.
And she says it's like more of like a spectrum. So it could be, you know, a married couple is out to dinner and the husband's like, I think that woman is beautiful. And he's being honest about it. And she's like, that could be on one end of the spectrum of an open relationship. Where I think when that term gets thrown around, my immediate reaction before the book was like, married couples going to like sex clubs, right? Like they're swingers. But I look at it differently, of like just being honest with one another. What do you think about cheating?
I totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh, let me tell you, I'll tell you what I think. So I had a friend and he was thinking about open relationships and just like the ability to like to love other people and how it's almost impossible. But then he thought that he had seen people like widows or widowers falling in love again. And so he was thinking like, oh, maybe you can love other people just as much as you loved your previous partner.
Yeah.
I think I'm much more patient with, I know people that have cheated on people, and I'm much more patient with it. I think that people should be open and upfront, and even if they should be like, hey, it's not working, and the next day they find somebody else, that is better than finding somebody else and then, like, you know, like, break up with them. If you effectively have the balls to cheat, you should tell them before, like, hey, I'm gonna go cheat on you. Bye.
Yeah.
I think that you should respect your partner enough for that.
Yeah. Maturity.
You're a nurse, but what is a career that you've never pursued?
I've always wanted to teach.
Really?
I like teaching.
Like art?
I'm kind of ready to teach.
Are you?
I'm kind of ready to just... I love nursing. I really do. But I don't know. It feels like when I was teaching in, like, doing clinicals in the hospital, that those days didn't feel like work at all.
Really?
It was just, like, effortless.
Yeah.
Taking care of patients that are critically ill, I feel like that burden of like, this is a big deal, and like if I make a mistake, I could do something to really hurt the patient or the family. When it comes to teaching, it's just it's less stress and more of like, just expose the students to different experiences as much as possible to like build their like nursing experiences. And I like being a part of that process and like watching things click with them.
Yeah. I understand that.
I mean, it's so weird, but I used to work at Starbucks and I like dream about going back.
No.
Isn't that weird?
A little.
I was treated better at Starbucks than I was as a nurse.
Stop.
I'm just going to go right up
By
the page and say
the
that.
clientele or by the management?
Management.
Really?
Yeah, we had free coffee when we were working. We would get written up if we didn't take a 15-minute break 4 hours into our shift. They were way more focused on breaks and safety. And we had stocks.
You did?
Medical, dental, vision, working 20 hours a week.
You're kidding me.
I didn't even get that. as a nurse. You have to be like a 0.6, which would be 24 hours a week.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, so I like dream about that. Is that so weird?
Let's just, once you have your master's and I have my PhD, let's just work at Starbucks.
Let's do it.
Why not?
Like one day a week.
Just put the degree in the back pocket.
Yeah.
Got it. You can always return.
Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm serious. Like, it was like the least stressful job ever.
Really?
And when I would open, I would work from like 4:30 in the morning to like 9 a.m. And then I would go to classes, and it was like 4-hour shifts just fly by.
See, I worked at a tea shop in London, and I was so stressed.
You were?
If I had more than one coffee to make, I would literally just be like this. I didn't know how to make like a cappuccino or anything. Everything I made was a latte. They're like, oh, a cappuccino with extra foam, and I'd be like, latte? And they'd look at it.
A lot of milk.
Lots of milk. Or like a flat white, and I'd just be like, ugh. I could make tea amazingly, right?
Yeah.
Just tea.
That is so funny.
Or also, if I had more than 2 people ordering at the same time, they'd put me on dishes because I'd get so stressed.
That is
It's a wreck.
so funny.
When you hear the siren of an ambulance, what's your first thought?
Oh, shit.
For you or for the people in there?
The people. And for first responders. I think being a first responder would suck.
Really, why?
I don't know, because it's like there's no filter. Like, you're there, like the raw scene of like heart attacks and emergencies and traumas and
How do people
drug
deal with that?
overdoses. And like, I would just be constantly worried about like stepping on like a used needle if I was, like, or like hoarders' houses,
My stomach is
getting
doing this.
people out of their homes. Like, it's way more contained in the hospital. But first responders, they're like fast track to heaven in my book. They really are. Firefighters, EMTs,
Oh my gosh.
paramedics.
They probably see a lot of blood.
A lot. Yeah.
No. Okay. This is the last. There's 2 more questions. Well, kind of. The last question for you.
Okay.
Who is someone, or more than one person, who has always wanted the best for you and always cared about who you would become?
I would say my parents are there, and then also my grandparents. So I was lucky enough to have a lot of people. They're kind of always looking over me. I kind of just say it how it is, too. So I'm just like, I'm doing this. And they're just like, okay, I think that's a great idea. No, they don't really argue with me.
I mean, Papa would never really argue.
No.
He doesn't do too much pushback.
He doesn't.
He loves you a lot.
Yeah. He's really sweet. He's super sweet. I think you should interview him next.
I
think
will.
You should do Pop and Grandma, do like a joined interview, and then Morgan Witt.
Yes. Do you think Diane would be interviewed?
Yeah.
It'd be harder to... Morgan would be in. Morgan would do it.
I think Morgan is like a little wizard in that body. I think he's full of wisdom. He pulls out these one-liners where I'm like, okay, Eckhart Tolle.
Really?
Very connected to the universe.
He's in.
He's deep. He goes deep.
We could I have ice water. Have a chat.
Yes.
Okay, the last question. So I got to explain this. I think that every interviewer gets off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
So the last question is for me. You can ask me anything.
My first... I'm not going to make this inappropriate.
No, Ashley did.
Yeah, I was like, I've already picked pegging just to me.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
I hate, this is the worst part of it. I get so nervous.
Why?
I just did an interview yesterday, and the guy was like, if your parents were on a plane and it was crashing and you had one parachute, which parent would you give it
what?
to?
That's horrible.
I know what I said?
I don't like that.
I said neither. I think that they would like to die together.
Oh.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Can you?
True.
I think they've been married, what, 48 years to separate them?
Yeah. don't know. I mean, I guess similar to the question that you asked me about being a nurse and like what have you learned from like death and loss and suffering and love, what's been like your biggest takeaway of like that you want to share with the world of what you've learned on this planet?
Oh my gosh. Do you know what? So I think about the people that I interviewed that had been tortured in war, and the thing that I've noticed is that they're not broken. They're not broken people. Their experiences have been shattering, but at the same time, like, they wake up every day, they take care of their family, they work. So what I've noticed is that our perception of my own brokenness is that I'm actually here and I'm actually whole. And I think, like, with my own life, let's say that, so with my own life, in the sense of like brokenness, like I could be, my whole life is completely shattered, like everything that's happened in my past, but at the same time, I'm still a whole person. And so then how can at this moment live in wholeness? But I don't know, that doesn't really, the other thing that I'm thinking is about baggage, is that I would always bring up, like, this happened in my childhood, here's my baggage, I've got to tell you it because you're not going to know me unless you know that. But honestly, I think it was because I hadn't worked through it. I hadn't, like, dealt with it. And I have this, like, vision of me in this big boat in the ocean and, like, all these huge trunks, and just dealing with it is just shoving it off and being like, you know what, you can know me without knowing my baggage, and you only know my baggage because I tell you my baggage because I think that it's important. Yeah. Like, for example, I'm 6'5", and if I went around being like, you know what, I'm 6'5", I've really got to tell you. Like, if I was to, I hadn't, like, absorbed the reality of my life. Yeah. And so when it comes to, like, my own baggage, like, okay, all of these things happened. If I don't tell you, if I do tell you, it doesn't really matter because I've dealt with it. Yeah. You know? Yep. So I guess when it comes to the brokenness, when it comes to all of these things, there's like, what does dealing with it mean? In my perception is that I can look at it and not be affected by it. I think, yeah. Did any of that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, clearly, it's difficult for me to articulate it because I still am working out what that, how I digest it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there's also, like, that rising woman I was telling you about. She's based out of Vancouver. She has the perspective that we both, in, like, relationships, we bring in baggage. Yeah. And it's respectfully and lovingly allowing ourselves to unpack that baggage together or separately too. Yeah. Like, no one's perfect. Like, we all walk into situations where it's like, and not even necessarily just in relationships, like even like in friendships too. Like, I've experienced in my friendships, I can just say what's going on, like with my baggage, and then we can both kind of like unpack it together. Yeah. And with work, you know, like having negative experiences of previous work stuff and being honest, like, this is what happened. How can I help prevent this from happening again? So I think, like, with that baggage, it's like sometimes maybe it'll never go away. Yeah. Like, it's...
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's our relationship to our baggage. That's what I'm trying... Yeah. For my own life, it's how I relate to it. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
I like it.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Miriam.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks, everyone, for watching another episode of Oh, Go On Then, You're Amongst Friends. Bye-bye. There we go.
I love it.
How fun.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Oh, Go On Then, You're Amongst Friends. All of the podcasts are made possible thanks to the generosity of our online community of supporters, who I see as the friends who listen along. I love that. I love that the podcasts begin with you, the listener. You can visit ohgoonthen.com to learn more about the podcast and maybe consider supporting the creation of new episodes. Anything counts. If you can't, I completely understand. I'm really grateful for the time that we have together. You'll find the link to ohgoonthen.com in the show notes below. To all of you who listen and have been so encouraging, thank you, thank you, thank you. Could not do this without you. And I look forward to our next episode together.